So one last final thing that we're going to do while we're here working with the event dispatcher is create our own event class. Now we did this in the Symfony videos, but let's see how we can wire it up inside of Drupal. It's actually pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go to the resource pack directory, and I'm going to copy this blind date notable event.php, adding a custom event class. And then I'm going to go back over to our blind date folder, and I'm in the source folder, and that's where we want this class. Anything that we want to be auto-loaded needs to end up in our source folder. So that doesn't include our YAML files, but it does include any of our classes that we're going to use. So we're going to rename this blind date notable event.php. Let's take a look at what the structure is here. Now I basically just copied this from an existing event. Any class that extends event could serve as a good sort of boilerplate. If we do a quick search, I'm going to copy this and do a quick search across the entire code base in Drupal 8. You can see we have 24 uses. Here's our example here, but let's take a look at config collection info extending event. I'm going to close out the bottom half here so we can see a little bit more of the code. So config collection info extends event, and if we look at the full signature, I'm going to open up the structure section. It has add collection as a method, get collection names, and get override service. These all seem like custom methods, and if we look down here, we can see that none of them are overriding parent methods at all. We would see a little green circle with a red arrow on the left-hand side if it was. So we have a lot of freedom in our event here. The event class itself, if we follow up the chain, we can just control-click this. We're going to go to the core version here. Here's the full signature here. These are all of the methods that get defined inside of the event class. It doesn't really look like there's an awful lot here that we would probably use as we extend an event. I'm sure they're useful on some level, but it's probably not the level that we would need to work in. So our event, if we go ahead and take a look at it, really only needs to do two things. One, we need to be able to set the string to a new string to override the default. And second, we need to be able to get that string back out again. Now again, we could use properties inside the class, but that's not the best way to do it. We want to use getters to wrap around those properties. And if we look at the code itself over here, the constructor takes the string as a single argument and it sets it as the string property of the class, of the instance. And if we scroll down, we have getString and it returns the string, and we have setString and it just overrides the string with the value that gets passed in. Pretty simple. Most of this is just comments. So now to wire it up so we're using this instead of the generic event, what we need to do is edit our controller. So I'm going to jump over to our blind date controller. This is where the event gets triggered. Now we're going to replace this new generic event with a blind date notable event. I'm just going to type this in, blind date notable event. And instead of taking a subject and arguments, it's just taking a string, which is more appropriate for what we want here, right? We're just editing one string. So by creating our own event, we can create a much more readable and reasonable signature here for this class instantiation. Now this string doesn't exist right now. It's actually set right here. So we need to replace this bit with a string equals, this is the default string. So now this step here should remain the same. We can still call this blind date.notable event. We're passing an event. Event is a different type of object now, but it's still called event. And then finally, we're grabbing the string again. So our event class now has a getString method. And so we're going to use that instead of getArgument. So we'll do getString. So this should now be okay. We should be good to go here. But there's one other place that we need to adjust, which is where we tap into this event in our subscriber. So let's go ahead and check out our subscriber code here. And again, we're triggering the onNotable event method here, but this is getting passed in generic event. So that's not what we're passing anymore, right? So let's go ahead and replace this with blind date notable event. And then in the event, we're not setting the argument anymore, we're setting the string. So let's replace this with setString, and we'll put in updated string, which is what we had before, and we'll save this. Okay. Now we have added a new class to be auto-loaded, so in order to get that to register, we need to rebuild our caches. So I'm going to jump back to our browser, and let's go to Configuration, Performance, and clear all caches. Okay, and let's go to our blind date page. It says updated string here, which means that it should be working, but let's adjust that string just to make sure. We'll add just a couple little characters here in this string, save it, and refresh. And sure enough, updated Striffling.